Good evening, everyone. My name is Helen Zhang, and I'm the professional developer working at the Lemelson-MIT Program. Thanks a lot for your interest in this webinar this evening. Welcome you all. As a lot of you are aware of, starting October, we are offering a series of free webinars once every 2 weeks, featuring topics essential to invention education. Today, we're talking about hands-on skills used in invention projects, working with PVC materials and framing systems such as 80/20. This webinar will be recorded and posted online so that you can review them at your convenience. After this webinar, we will send out a separate email about how to access the recording and the slides and also registration for this next webinar, which will be hosted on January 11th. And we're going to talk about developing empathy during invention projects. So please keep an eye on that. For today's webinar, please post your questions in the chat window. At the end of our presentation, we will have about 5 minutes to answer the questions. You don't need to turn on the microphone on your computer. Okay, let's get started. Just to briefly introduce our program. The Lemelson-MIT program is a multifaceted program for inventors at all ages. We have over 15 years of experience of working with high school teachers and students on invention projects, which is supported our Inventive grant initiative. We also offer free curriculum materials on design skills and projects for middle school and early high school students, which is supported by the JV Inventive grant initiative. This evening, I'm proud to invite Don Domes, one of our master teachers, to co-host today's webinar to talk about practical suggestions and tips on working with PVC materials and framing systems. So, a brief introduction of Don. Don is a retired high school CTE teacher working for the Hillsborough Public School District in Oregon. Since retirement, Don has been working on special projects in STEAM and CTE for the Office of School Performance in the school district. He has been hosting workshops and webinars to present practical suggestions and tips to engineering, robotics, and science teachers who are interested in project-based learning. About 10 years ago, Don led the invent team of the Hillsborough High School. His team invented a self-installed car heads-up display. Since then, he has been working as a master teacher for our program. So Don, welcome. Can you tell us more about the invention your team created?
Yes, thank you. The students wanted to help drivers keep their eyes on the road when driving. They came up with a way to display the information on the dash in the bottom quarter of the windshield of the car. They used a connection to the car's computer. There's an onboard diagnostics computer connection under the dash. They connected that up to a mini computer that they put under the passenger seat, fed the output of that back to a display that's set on the dash and reflected into the bottom quarter of the windshield, which they had a special reflective coating on, so that when you drove down the road, you could see what speed you were going, what gear you were in, whether the turn signals were on. We even got it to work with Microsoft Streets and Trips so that you could essentially, it was before the fancy GPS stuff that we have today, but you could see where you were going. And they had a great time with it. If in the picture, you can see the young lady looking forward, and we had a special sheet of glass there with that little model. We couldn't bring a car into the Stata Center, but the kids were actually able to demonstrate this working, and you could see it in the bottom half of that piece of glass kind of in front of her.
Wow, that's amazing. Thank you very much for sharing this. I wish 10 years ago we have all this in our cars. Yeah. Okay. So before we move to talk about the working with the materials and tools, it's important you emphasize the basic safety rules because we have a lot of teachers and we are going to work with students in classrooms. So Don, can you talk about the safety rules?
Yes, safety rules are really, really important, especially with working with students. Of course, safety glasses is an obvious kind of a one. We had a rule in my lab where in the area that we worked on things, everybody in that area had to have safety glasses on at all times. If you're in doubt about using a tool, make sure that you learn how to use that tool by going online and watching some good training videos. And you probably better watch more than one because not everybody demonstrates things the same way or correctly. If you know a shop teacher, especially an old school shop teacher, ask them. They have lots of great safety information. Make sure when you're going to use a tool that you have a plan for what you're going to do with the tool. And then anybody else that comes into the space, part of the reason we had that everyone in the workspace has to have safety glasses on, because people would be concentrating on what they're doing, other people would walk up close by and essentially be in same risk category just because of their proximity. So you got to keep track of who else is in the space and protect yourself and also protect them. Securing the workpiece using clamps so you can put both hands on the tool is super important. If you've got the workpiece attached with good clamps so it's not moving, then most of the tools will work appropriately, assuming you're using them appropriately. But if the kids are trying to hold on to the workpiece and then run the tool, that's a really big formula for potential danger. Whenever you're using a tool, you don't want to be standing on water or a lot of junk that's on the floor where you could slip or anything like that. You want to make sure that you have your body solidly placed. And then, of course, any type of jewelry, watches, loose clothing, hair should be tied back, all of those kinds of things, especially if you're using a tool that spins. If anything gets caught in that, it can be catastrophic. So make sure that you also have closed toe footwear in case something drops, that at least there's something there to protect your feet. Never work when you're tired or unfocused. If you're in a hurry, usually they say that accidents are much more likely to happen when people are in a hurry and when they're not paying attention to what they're doing. So focus is very key. And then, of course, you want to leave your workspace cleaner than you found it so that anybody else that comes into that workspace can use it appropriately. Again, talk to a shop teacher or talk to someone that has a lot of experience with this if you don't, and make sure you cover the first aid things. It's really good on any kind of power tool that you have a safety test or a safety quiz that students take, and you should have a general shop safety quiz also on file that shows that you did give adequate and appropriate safety instruction.
Great. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing all the safety rules. Again, safety is the most important thing when having kids working with the real materials and tools. Okay, so now let's start moving to the PVC materials. So you can easily find the PVC materials in hardware stores. Do you remember seeing a picture like this in Home Depot or Lowe's or any other hardware stores? And a picture like this, and a picture like this. Actually, these are all the pictures Dawn took yesterday in a Home Depot store. Yeah. So, yeah, these are all the materials making you all the instruments that you can potentially use create using PVC materials. So first, what is the PVC? So it is polyvinyl chloride. So PVC is the word third most widely produced synthetic plastic polymer. Roughly half of the world's PVC manufactured each year is used in water pipes or plumbing and also construction and also electrical conduit. So PVC in general is a common, strong, but lightweight plastic used in industry. It comes with different diameters, different lengths, different strengths, and different shapes. Specifically in the pictures we have here, the picture on very top, you can see the gray colored one, the gray colored PVC pipes. These are often used for the electrical conduit, and the white ones are often used for water pipes. And in stores, you can often find the black ones, which are also actually called ABS, are typically used for sewer or water drains. Okay.
So PVC has some characteristics that are really useful for us when we're trying to create models and inventions and stuff. It has high hardness. It does have some burst pressure, and it has quite a bit of strength. There's lots of different variations of PVC. You can see the flexible in that top picture. And if you go into the electrical conduit or the electrical tubes where they run wires inside the tubes, there's flexible PVC like that at Home Depot or Lowe's. In the bottom picture, you can see the more rigid PVC. You can actually, if you go to a plastics company like TAP or some of the other plastics companies, you can get it in a variety of colors, etc. It has really poor heat stability, and it starts to decompose well under 300 degrees Fahrenheit. It's got good electrical insulation. It's chemically resistant to acids, salts, bases, fats, those kinds of things. It tends to not get soft on you when you put even duct tape or anything else on it, but it is not safe to use it under pressure. The kinds of things that we see kids trying to do are these t-shirt shooters or maybe tennis ball shooters or something like that where they put it under pressure. Do not use PVC under pressure. It's not designed for high pressures, and it can burst and create almost a shrapnel or a grenade type effect. So do not use PVC under pressure.
Yeah. So during invention, we recommend using PVC as a prototyping material, not for this kind of intended use for household construction or plumbing, and of course not under pressure. So here is an example of an invent team using PVC to prototype their solutions. In the pictures, you will see these are testing high school invented teams. Last year, they invented a gum removal machine. At the early stage of the invention processes, when they were trying to decide their potential invention solutions, they used the PVC pipes and cardboards to help with their thinking. To solve the problems of removing the gum litters on campus, they envisioned they are going to use three potential pipes. So one of the pipe would have hot water applied to the gum before removing, and then one of the pipe would have the chemicals with a brush to resolve gum litter, and one pipe could potentially connect to a fan to dry the ground after cleaning. So that's why here in the picture on the left side, you can see these are three PVC pipes to prototype these ideas. And on the right side is a picture of their final project. You can see these are still, those are the pipes. This time they are not using PVC because they are dealing with hot water and chemicals. Yeah, but you can see the features of all the pipes, the elements are still there. So basically, because PVC comes with different sizes, different lengths, and different shapes, it can be easily used to prototype invention ideas for quick feedback and help students to facilitate their thinking during invention. But please note, properties of PVC need to be considered when you prototype inventions. For example, it cannot be used in invention that relates to fire or relates to dealing with environments with high temperature, and it cannot be used under pressure because it will burst. In the example of the testing invent team, they used the PVC just to help them concrete their initial invention ideas, but they did not even do a test with the real hot water because it might decompose. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and
So
we
Don,
might
can you
add.
talk about tools? Yeah.
Yes, I'm going to talk about tools, and we might add that if you do want to do hot water, there's a type of PVC called CPVC, and it's a slightly different color, kind of a pink to cream type color. There's some other things also at Home Depot and Lowe's. Just don't use you've got to check on the material characteristics and what the ratings are on it. For tools to work with PVC, of course, safety glasses, and then if you're going to cut quite a bit of it and make some dust, you definitely want to have a dust mask. The hacksaw or the back saw, basically PVC works very similar to wood. And so any kind of a tool that would typically work on wood will usually work with PVC. So you can see the hacksaw there. I usually recommend at least a 10 or a 12-inch blade on that. Some kind of ratchet style knife, and you can get those. You can get it less expensive models than that at Home Depot or Lowe's. And the nice thing about the ratchet style pipe cutter is you don't have any dust. It just literally slices. The PVC is soft enough that you can just run the blade right through it with that mechanical advantage ratchet. You can use power tools. You need to be especially careful if you're going to do power tools. We show a miter saw there, but like round PVC, if it begins to roll or spin when it's under there, it can create real problems. Also, if you've got little pieces on a miter saw like that, you've got to have your hand way back. It needs to be clamped securely. I've seen the cutoff end come flying out of that, which could injure somebody. Unless you really know what you're doing with power tools or you have somebody that really knows what they're doing, I would seriously caution you from using power tools with students. The hand tools will work great, and they're really adequate to get the shapes that you want. There's some more tools here. The clamp, of course, there's a variety of kinds of clamps. Irwin makes a set of clamps. That's a DeWalt that's on there. They make a set of adapters. You can get all those at Lowe's that help you with clamping like irregular shapes. The Stanley miter box in the center on the top is absolutely a great tool for cutting PVC as well as wood and some other things. There's a little example of a jig that someone built on there with the green arrow on it right now. Now, with wood or PVC or metal, any of these objects, if you cut them with a saw, they're going to leave a ragged edge. And so using sandpaper is a good way to clean up the ragged edge. And it's cheap, stores easily. A file is also an excellent way to clean up a ragged edge, but the file oftentimes will be flat, where the sandpaper you can kind of contour to the shape. Now there's a Vimeo video here that I created on cutting thin PVC and drilling thin PVC. When the materials are thin, it presents some special problems, and if you're going to be working with thin stock at all, I would highly recommend that you watch that video. That video also has a lot of safety considerations in it and some tricks on how to use some simple things to get the fabrication done that you're trying to get done.
Yeah. Great. Thank you for talking about all the tools. I just want to emphasize that please make sure emphasize the safety rules when students are working with those tools, as some of the tools have sharp edges or tips. So please make sure your students will follow all the safety rules. And also for our webinar, if you have any questions, please put in your questions in the chat window and we'll get a chance to answer it at the end of our presentation. Okay, so next let's move on to 80/20, the framing system. So first, I would say, yeah, so please take some, maybe 20 seconds to try to put in your answers in this poll. Have you ever heard about 80/20? Yeah. Oh, we have about a quarter of our audience don't know about 80/20, and the majority of us we don't know about this material. Yeah, so that's fine, that's expected, because you won't be able to find 80/20 in a regular hardware stores such as Home Depot or Lowe's. Yeah. So if you know about kids' Erector Set, you can imagine 80/20 is just a grown-up version or an industry version of Erector Set. It's a framing system using extruded beams of aluminum alloy with T-slots for assembling. and 80-20 is widely used when you need to create a structure. The two pictures on the bottom are the inventions created using 80-20. For example, this one. On the left side, you can see is the whole pier and the stairs. They are all created using 80-20. And on the right side is a table with wheels created using 80-20. Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, it's just the stairs that's created with the
Oh, it's
80-20.
the stairs?
Yeah,
Okay.
just the stairs and the table. 80-20 is because you can move the T-nuts in those slots. If you put your green pointer on the slot on the piece, yes, right there. There's a slot there, and essentially you have the head of a bolt or a T-nut goes inside of that, and then protrudes out, and you can then attach all kinds of gussets and other parts, and you can attach these things together. And then if you want to move it like a quarter of an inch, then it's really easy to, as Helen indicated with the slot there, you can just slide it and move it. Traditional manufacturing, where you start out with solid pieces of steel or aluminum or wood, once you drill a hole, then that's where the hole is. And if you want to move it slightly up or slightly down, you've either got to elongate the hole or drill a new hole or come up with a different fastening system. So 80-20 has a lot of flexibility. It's pretty expensive. Not very many schools use it, but if you have a FIRST robotics team, they might use it. And if you're really serious about invention, you might want to get some of it because it comes in all kinds of different sizes and a variety of shapes. It's real handy.
Okay, yeah, so as Don mentioned about 80-20 can be very useful when you try to invent. So for example, here is the example of the Horizon Science Academy Cleveland High School invent team last year. So they invented a device to lift a kayak onto a standard car carrier. So you can see here at the bottom here, you can see these are they use the 80-20 in black color for the structure. So this whole device is powered using a standard 12-volt car outlet, which lifts the kayak onto the roof rack in less than half a minute. So this invention will make it possible for people who cannot lift their kayak to continue participating in such a fun activity. And here on the right side of the pictures, you can see these are the students when they are trying to assemble 80-20 for the kayak lifter. So Don, can you talk about the tools working with 80-20?
So key tools, whether you're using 80-20 or wood or steel or PVC, any of these materials that you're going to fabricate with, you want to make sure, number one, everybody's got safety glasses on in the workshop. Gloves, if there's any kind of sharp edges or burrs, sometimes kids can get slivers, etc. Gloves can be totally appropriate. If there's any amount of dust, they should have dust masks. For cutting the aluminum, a hacksaw is the most appropriate thing. For cutting PVC and wood and those kinds of things, you can actually get by with any kind of woodworking tool like a back saw maybe. But if you're going to cut metal and aluminum, you need a hacksaw. You need to have clamps or jigs to hold 80-20 or any other material while you're cutting it. And then anytime you cut a material, there may be a burr or a sharp edge where you made the cut, and you need to have file, sandpaper, or some system to deburr those cut edges so that kids don't get cut on those cut edges. Also, you really want to know your blades. Of course, a blade that has missing teeth or one that's not straight is not going to work well. In the hacksaw, 32 teeth per inch is a really fine tooth blade. That's, if in doubt, 32 teeth, that's going to be about your best option. If you've got materials that are wide or thick, you can probably drop down to a 24 tooth or an 18 tooth. Anytime you're going to work with a saw, you need at least 4 or 5 teeth in the material. Otherwise, the teeth will essentially catch and it won't saw easily. So, and you should not be pushing down hard on the saw. Basically, each tooth will take out a little bit of material. You've got to pass the tooth far enough along that the material can fall out of the tooth. So your stroke, the movement of the saw across the material should be pretty much most of the length of the blade. You want to cut slowly. You can use power tools if you know the safety rules and if you provided adequate safety instruction. That's absolutely critical. Probably a safety test of some kind on that tool, both written and a personal monitored one. So power tools can be wonderful, but they can do a lot of damage really quickly, and they can be really dangerous. So you got to keep all that in mind. Fortunately, with all these materials, hand tools, good sharp hand tools, just work great, and they're not very expensive, and you don't have to have cords to plug them in. Videos on 80/20 in particular, if you go to those videos, they've got some excellent information. A lot of those are pretty short, and that'd be a great place to start if you're interested in using 80/20. Now, I went down to Home Depot and Lowe's, and the picture on the left is some what we call, a lot of people call this expanded metal. What it is it's just metal shapes like angle or tubing or flat that has a whole group of holes already drilled in it. And so then it's not as, you can't do the fine adjustment that you can with the slot in 80/20, but you get the strength of steel just by using this type of metal, and it's a ton less expensive than 80/20. The round stock that you see there is a piece of what we call all thread. It's just a threaded rod, and so you can make essentially any length of connector. Generally, all thread comes up to 3 feet lengths. At Home Depot and some of these other things come up to 6 feet or 8 feet lengths. On the right-hand picture is some pipe, just standard galvanized or black steel pipe. And if you go back in the plumbing section, you'll notice the threads. There's you can thread these pipes together. You see there's a T, there's a elbow, we call it a 90-degree bend, and then you can buy a lot of sizes of this pipe. Comes pre-cut and threaded. If you want special sizes of pipe, and it doesn't have the threads on it, at Home Depot and Lowe's, they have a threading machine, and they will cut and thread it for you for a cutting charge. Sometimes if you're a school, I've gotten them to do stuff for me just because, of course, schools don't have much money. So pipe, I've used, pipe can be really stiff. I've used a lot of this type of pipe for handrails and alongside of stairs and those kinds of things. There's this pipe originally, before we had PVC and PEX and a lot of other things, almost all the plumbing was done with this pipe, and your gas plumbing, if you've got natural gas, is probably done with black pipe. So you might, if you have a furnace, you might go out and see that in your house.
Great. Yeah, thank you very much, Don, for sharing all these materials, alternatives to the 80/20. So here I just want to mention about we have this resources listed on our Lemelson-MIT website, includes the JV inventives, the inventives, and also we have other resources we feel that will be useful. Instructables, 80/20net.net include a lot of project ideas, and also the 3 books we think that are useful to work with materials and tools.